Good morning. Our prelude this morning is Before We Begin, originally recorded by Broadcast. Here again at the end, before the beginning, so the salt will spill again. Throw it over your shoulder. Oh, it's in tomorrow, fortune or sorrow. Wait, you may win. I don't mean to show that I know how this goes before we begin again. You may hide on one side and me on the other. You may speak, but wait for me. My sentence may falter. Oh, it's in tomorrow, fortune or sorrow. Wait, we may win. I don't mean to show that I know how this goes before we begin again. So here we are at the end, before the beginning, and so the salt may spill again. Throw it over your shoulder. Oh, it's in tomorrow, fortune or sorrow. Wait, we may win. I don't mean to show that I know how this goes before we begin again. Before the beginning.
Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton here on the beginning of a new year. I first want to remember to thank all of the people who contributed to this service, of which there are always many. Tim Versteeg has taken on the role of tech, whatever they do, he's doing it. And John Elliott, of course, is his support. And we couldn't do the service without John and Tim. I also want to thank Cindy Carey, who was very helpful to me in organizing the music for today's service. And of course, our darling Rachel, who, I could just listen to her sing for the whole service. So thank you to all of those people. I think many of us are feeling that the year 2022 just has to be better than the year 2021. Yet, having said all of that about the year 2021, here we are, still living in Canada and still being more or less well. My name is Elizabeth Beckett, and I'm your service leader today. I am a person who highly values being Canadian, and my embrace of this country acknowledges the grave errors that early immigrants and settlers and the subsequent generations of those immigrants and settlers made in fulfilling their aspirational settlement hopes. Recognizing the consequences of those decisions for a nation of people who were displaced and exploited and then suffered the loss of their children is a burden that we all must shoulder. Acknowledging the past is a beginning only. As we enter into the year 2022, let it be a year that we move from truth to reconciliation.
Well,
Okay. So I'm also lighting the chalice. I have a little electronic chalice here to symbolize the chalice. A lit chalice is a time-honored symbol of entering into sacred space. Keeping the lamps alight is a life-affirming activity in many, many faith traditions, combining as it does light and warmth. As we light our chalice today, may we be inspired by its light to continue to seek the unfolding truth. And may we be comforted by its ancient warmth. May this flame be our light of friendship and love.
Come, come, whoever you are. These words by the Persian poet are part of a song found in our gray hymn book. We sing, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. The longer version of the poem continues. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come, come. At this time of new intentions and resolutions and vows made and sometimes broken, let us come together as a community. Come, come, whoever you are.
Number 9, no longer forward nor behind. No longer forward nor behind, I look in hope or fear, but grateful take the good I find, the best of now and here. I break my pilgrim staff, I lay aside the toiling oar. The angel sought so far away, I welcome at my door. For all the jarring notes of life seem blending in a song, and all the angles of its strife snow rounding into calm. And so the shadows fall apart, and so the west winds play, and all the windows of my heart I open to the day.
Today, I'm going to tell you a story about Toad, who made some cookies, and he wanted to share them with his friend Frog. Now, we all know that over the Christmas season, we've had lots of opportunities to eat cookies. So I want you to listen to the story to hear what happened to Toad and Frog. One day, Toad baked some cookies. He said, these cookies smell good. Toad ate one of the cookies. These cookies taste even better. Toad ran to Frog's house. Frog, Frog, he said, you should taste these cookies I have made. Frog ate one of the cookies. These are the best cookies I have ever eaten, said Frog. Frog and Toad ate many cookies, one after the other. You know, Toad, said Frog, we should stop eating. We will soon be sick. You are right, said Toad. Let us eat one last cookie, and then we will stop. So Frog and Toad ate one last cookie. there were many cookies left in the bowl. Frog, said Toad, let's eat one very last cookie, and then we will stop. Frog and Toad each ate one very last cookie. We must stop eating, cried Toad as he ate another cookie. Yes, said Frog as he reached into the bowl. We need willpower. What is willpower? Said Toad. Willpower is trying very hard not to do something that you want to do. You mean like eating all the cookies? Right, said Frog. Frog put the cookies in a box. There, he said, now we will not eat any more cookies. But Frog, we can open the box, said Toad. That is true, said Frog. So Frog got some string and tied string around the box. Now we will not eat any more cookies. But Frog, we can cut the string and open the box. Ooh, that is true, said Frog. So Frog got a ladder and he put the box tied with string on a very high shelf. There, he said, now we will not eat any more cookies. But Frog, we could climb the ladder, take down the box, cut the string, open the box. Oh, said Frog, that's true. So Frog got a ladder and he climbed up, he got the box down from the top shelf and he cut the string and he opened the box and he took the box outside. And he said in a very loud voice, "Hey, birds, cookies!" Birds came flying from everywhere and they took up all the cookies in their beaks and flew away. Toad said, "But Frog, now we have no cookies, not even one." "Yes," said Frog, "but we have plenty of willpower." "You can keep your willpower, Frog. I am going home to bake a cake." So much for New Year's resolutions. So that is our story today for all ages.
I release my fears to the sky above and open my heart and mind to the changes that will
morning. The ancient Babylonians did it. The ancient Egyptians did it. And the Romans did it too. A bit of an exploration of New Year's practices and observations around the world and over time shows us that many cultures, modern and ancient, have marked the New Year with special meals, parties, intoxicating beverages, dancing, and often with gifts to deities. The timing of New Year's celebrations changes from one group to the next, but there's a lot of overlap. If you've ever been to or watched a public New Year's celebration, you know that some traditions persist. Perhaps some of us embraced a traditional approach just this past Friday evening. But I've often wondered how an occasion that's about marking a transition from one year to the next became such a wild one. In my mind, the more sober Jewish perspective for Rosh Hashanah, the start of their new year, makes more sense. Yes, it includes some special foods and good wishes for and personal acknowledgement of one's sins of the past year. But then I learned about the Romans, who marked the new year with drunken orgies, and their rationalization that their approach was a solemn reenactment of the chaos that existed before the gods brought order to the cosmos. Wild parties at New Year's, and then a reestablishing of order and rules to follow. I personally might think the Romans' reasoning was a bit liberal, but on some level I get it. Either way, wild or reflective, New Year's was and is a big thing. I need to confess right now, though, that I have been for many years a bit of a New Year's Eve Scrooge. I don't like big parties, and I have heard more than enough sloppy and too sentimental recountings of the past year for my liking. Me, I generally welcome the New Year's early, most often before 10 p.m., with a few people, usually family, and then happily head to my cozy bed. I am not saying that my approach is the right one for everyone, certainly the right one for me. The last New Year's party that I recall that I found really interesting was when I was 12 years old, and my parents and their friends were taking a traditional approach to ringing in the new year, when their friend, in his enthusiasm, did a somersault down the hill on the front lawn. He was wearing a kilt at the time. Like I say, that was the last really interesting New Year's Eve party I was at. But here we are, 2022. We've rounded the corner on another year. 2021 was a complicated piece of business on many levels. Pandemic aside, there was more than enough going on to make us want to see the end of it. Heat domes, fires, graves at residential schools. The list could go on and on. Personally, and I suspect the same is true for you, I've watched people I love and care for struggle to navigate this complicated business. I've struggled too. It isn't easy. Will school start or not? What will happen to my job? My neighbor has COVID. My family member is campaigning against vaccinations. I've had, and I know you've had too, these conversations. There have been days when all I've wanted to do was to jump into my bed and pull the covers over my head. And too often when I got there, I have found I couldn't sleep. But there've been some sweet moments too, really, haven't there been? Babies were born. People figured out how to get married and include loved ones in their celebrations, even at a distance. More countries have expanded rights for GLBTQ people. Incarceration rates in the US have dropped to the lowest level in decades. Goodness knows we are messing a lot of stuff up, but we're getting some things right. The Roman god Janus, who has given our January his name, was thought to be both an optimist and a pessimist. There are hard things and good things in the past, and we all know that we're more than a bit naive if we think a new calendar is going to change things a lot. Perhaps that's where the practice of resolutions comes in. I think most of us love a fresh start, a clean page, and we all know that things won't change unless we change. I often find myself in my personal life and in the work I do with congregations using the old saying, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you got. So resolutions are about us saying, I resolve to bring some new focus, some new energy into the new year. I recognize I haven't always done what I could to make this year what it could have been for me or for others. And so I'm committing myself to doing better. I want this new year, this new trip around the sun to be, yes, be the change you want to see. No matter how hard the past is, you can always begin again. Yes. Now, I think if we all close our eyes, we can all imagine some inspirational music right now. And yet, according to a 2017 study, only 9% of resolution makers felt they had been successful at the end of the year. Me, I don't really make New Year's resolutions anymore, probably because I am not, nor have I ever been, I think, in the 9% of those who consider themselves successful. My take on this, it's a lot of pressure to put on the start of a new year. Setting a New Year's resolution, an intent for a whole year, seems a bit much for me. Personally, I find I have better success when I take things in smaller bits. I certainly don't look out on my overgrown garden on a summer's morning and say, today is the day I'm going to get this cleaned up. Instead, I say, today's the day I'm going to weed this small section. Tomorrow, I might do another. If I sat here this morning looking out at the next 363 days with the intention of doing a big thing, I think I'd fail. In my experience, big changes are made up of small steps. I can imagine saying, I'll get my daily step goal for the next week. But if I tried to say I'd do it for the whole year, I don't know. I'm sure I'd fail. I'd get sick and need time off. There'd be a day when, for any number of appropriate reasons, I'd fall short. We are all flawed. We all fall short. We are all fallible, and that's okay. Doesn't mean we stop learning or growing or improving in some ways. I think goals that are too ambitious can, ironically, lead to failure. I think of children working on a coloring page and making a mistake or placing a line where it doesn't belong, according to the vision in their mind's eye. And then they crumple their page and toss it aside with an anguished, it's ruined. As we grow, hopefully we learn that a misplaced line or a missed meditation doesn't mean the end of the effort. And I know for myself, it's easier to start again if I don't measure success by the most ambitious of standards. For me too, another challenge of New Year's is, as a start again place, is that we only get one of them a year. Just one January 1st a year. It's funny, isn't it? Because in truth, every day is the beginning of a new year. It might not be the beginning of a new calendar year, but it's the start of a year. When I was a child at camp, we'd start every morning, gathered around in a circle, all those shining bright faces of the little girls we were. We'd watch the flag raising, and then we'd recite this. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lay all the verities and realities of our existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. I was delighted when I came to the Unitarian congregation and found that piece in our hymnal. I was a sentimental and impressionable kid, and that poem, attributed to the Sanskrit poet Kalidasa, had real impact on me. January 1st is only one day in a string of days. A string of days in a lifetime of days. The average Canadian gets over 29,000 days, but only 81 January 1st. If we want or need a change, we don't need to wait. In fact, we probably shouldn't wait. Another thing that doesn't sit quite right with me about New Year's is the so long and good riddance approach that I often hear. As I said, I've heard more than enough soggy, sloppy, overly sentimental tales of woe about the previous years, jobs and breakups and more recounted over yet another intoxicating beverage. I'm just going to forget that disaster and move on. I'm more than happy enough to pretend that thing never happened, is an attitude that seems embedded in a kick it to the curb approach that we often hear around this time of year. But wait a minute. What if those heartaches and failed relationships and job disasters are our teachers? In recent years, I've even found myself feeling a bit blasphemous when at our congregation's first Sunday after New Year's, we're invited to write something we want to let go of on a piece of flash paper. One by one, we come forward and drop our paper by a flame, things we could do when we were in person. We drop our flame and poof, the regret, the anger, and the hurt are gone. But are they really gone? And perhaps more importantly, should they be gone? Forgiveness isn't an instant act. Sure, I know the ritual we've observed in past years is symbolic. And don't get me wrong, there are things that I do think we need to let go of. Perhaps timing is key. There are practices that I've engaged in that I'm glad to have left behind. But to get there, often I've had to sit with my own remorse, my own regret, to learn the things that I want to do differently. If I'd been too quick to move on, I might have missed the opportunity to learn and grow. If my New Year's practice was about a quick rejection of things that made me uncomfortable, I'm not even sure where I'd be today. What if our collective New Year's practice was tinged with too much, oh, that was then, we don't do that now, thinking? A self-satisfied, I'm past that outlook wouldn't help us ask tough questions as individuals, faith communities, or societies. It wouldn't help us ask tough questions about our relationships with ourselves, the earth, people of color, Indigenous people. It wouldn't help us as we work to understand the attitudes and practices that continue to harm. What if those failures, those missteps, those delusions are our teachers? If we're too quick to say, why don't they just get over it? Or why do we have to talk about it? We're likely to get stuck in places where we shouldn't get stuck. Residential schools are a case in point. Learning about them helps us understand something about the long-term impacts that system has had on many generations of Indigenous people. Failure to learn about them makes it too easy to dismiss the needs for concrete steps that need to be taken to mitigate the harm that's been done. Okay, maybe I'm taking all of this a bit too literally. Maybe celebrating a new year is just one way we can remind ourselves that new possibilities exist. Maybe rejecting past challenges isn't meant to give us a get out of jail free card. And I'm all for a bit of frivolity. So maybe I'm not really the New Year's Scrooge I've thought of myself as. Maybe I just need to think about reframing New Year's and remind myself that I don't like most big and rambunctious parties. It's not just New Year's ones I don't like. And that I'm an introvert and that by nature I'm a bit reflective. I did have a good time on Friday night. Dancing under a disco ball with a 6-year-old is something that I can recommend. Janice, looking back, looking forward. On reflection, that's a balanced approach I can get behind. Yes, the past has had a mix of messy and marvelous moments, and there is good reason to believe that 2022 will too. There is work to be done. I don't know how it's all going to turn out for me or for us, but I know that refusing to muster up some resolve isn't going to help. Me, I'm a one day at a time kind of person. Maybe you're a whole year kind of person. Maybe we need both. Maybe we need to be both. Let's get started with doing what we can with what we have now. And along the way, can we agree to give ourselves permission to fail, to take breaks, to laugh, to dance a little disco, drink a little wine, or whatever it is you need to do? Because ultimately, the thing I do know, the thing that shines true for me through all the muddle of my thinking about endings and beginnings, is that we ought to figure out a way to do it together and to support one another along the way. I am going to mess this up, and chances are you will too. With any luck, we won't mess up at the same time. Thank you for being here with me today on Zoom again. I'm truly honored to be starting 2022 with you. And in my mind's eye, I can imagine us all in an open field, ringed by camp cabins with a lake nearby, starting the day, reminding one another of this one true thing. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But every today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. And Happy New Year's, friends.
Number 123, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stories of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
I'll close this part of today's service with these words, written as a benediction for Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, by Amy Zucker Morgenstern. She wrote, "The book of life is open before us. It tells stories of sadness and happiness, despair and hope, stagnation and change, and a beautiful stillness that transcends all. May you be written in the book of life, and may you write your own name there in shining ink, stirred together from the tears of the past and the sweet flower essence of the hoped-for future. May you know who you have been and who you are, and bless your future self with brave, loving intention."
The postlude this morning is one of my favorite New Year's songs, My Dear Acquaintance. My dear acquaintance, it's so good to know you. The strength of your hand that is loving and giving. So happy New Year, with love overflowing, with joy in our hearts for the blessed New Year. So raise your glass and we'll have a cheer for all of us who are year.